If Jesus paid the full, infinite price for your sins on the cross, why do you still have to pay for them after you die? That is the central claim of the doctrine of purgatory. It teaches that after you die, if you are saved but still carry the temporal punishment of sin, you must go through a temporary state of purification, often described as fire, before you can enter heaven.
But we are going to trace the historical timeline of this doctrine and apply the double payment logic to see if the theological math actually holds up. Because if purgatory is true, the cross wasn't enough. But if it is a later human invention, we have a massive problem. Welcome to Doctrine Distilled. Let's distill the truth.
Wait, let's be completely honest about what this looks like in real life. This isn't just abstract theology. It is deeply, painfully personal. Meet Maria. Maria is a devout, loving woman. Her husband, Thomas, passed away last year. Thomas was a good man, a believer, but he had a terrible temper. He held grudges. He died suddenly, without time to confess his final sins. Now, Maria prays the rosary every single night for his soul. She is terrified. She genuinely believes Thomas is currently in a place of agonizing fire, and that her prayers are the only things cooling the flames.
The arguments we are breaking down in this series are the ones most Christians cannot answer. Subscribe so you are never caught without a response again.
You already know the answer to this. You just haven't heard the math said out loud yet. To understand purgatory, you have to understand the framework it was built on, the ledger. God's holiness is absolute perfection. Our human record is flawed. When we sin, the guilt is forgiven, but the debt of the punishment remains. Purgatory is the balancing mechanism. It is the place where you pay off the remaining debt. Think of it like a mortgage. Christ paid the down payment that bought the house, but you still have to make the monthly installments to fully own it.
Save this video. The next time someone brings up purgatory or praying for the dead, you will want to come back to the exact historical and biblical breakdown we are about to do. But what happens when we check the original source code?
But hold on, because what comes next is the part that most people have never seen. Defenders of purgatory always point to 1 Corinthians 3:15, where Paul says a person's work will be tested by fire, and if it burns up, they will suffer loss, but will be saved, but only as one escaping through the flames. But look closely at the text. Paul is not talking about the purification of human souls. He is talking about the evaluation of a minister's work and ministry. The fire tests the quality of the building materials, gold, silver, or straw. Paul wasn't talking about purging sin from a person. He was talking about rewarding faithfulness in service. So, where did the actual doctrine come from? Let's trace the history. In the 3rd century, Christians started praying for the dead, a beautiful, natural expression of grief. But by the 11th century, the theology shifted. The concept of a literal, physical place of fire called purgatory was invented. And by the 15th century, it became a financial system. The church began selling indulgences, certificates that reduced your time in purgatory. The famous preacher Johann Tetzel literally used this slogan: "As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs." The history explains how the tradition started, but the math reveals why the tradition must end. If that just changed how you read church history, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this conversation is worth having and puts it in front of someone who needs it today. This brings us to the double payment. Hebrews 10:14 says, "By one sacrifice he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy." If Christ's payment on the cross was infinite, it covered 100% of your debt, past, present, and future. If you have to pay for your own sins in purgatory, you are making a secondary payment. But in justice,
A debt cannot be paid twice. If you pay it, Christ didn't. If Christ paid it, you don't have to.
I want to say something here that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Psychologically, purgatory makes a lot of sense. If someone came to mind while you were watching this, maybe someone who hurt you and never apologized, share this with them. It's a hard truth, but it's a healing one. We hate the idea of getting away with a petty sin. We want cosmic justice. We want a place where the scales are perfectly balanced before we meet a perfectly holy God. Purgatory satisfies our human desire for fairness. But psychological comfort is not biblical truth. God's solution to our imperfection wasn't a secondary purification process. It was the imputation of Christ's perfect righteousness. He doesn't just forgive the debt, he gives you his perfect ledger. Think about what that means for Maria. Maria doesn't need to pray her fingers to the bone to cool the flames. Thomas isn't burning, because when Thomas died, he didn't rely on his own perfect ledger. He relied on the finished work of Christ. Maria can stop fighting for his soul and start resting in the grace that already secured it. So, if Jesus paid the full, infinite price for your sins on the cross, why do you still have to pay for them after you die? You don't. When we look at the text, the history, and the math, the conclusion is inescapable. Purgatory isn't a waiting room for heaven. It is a receipt that says the cross wasn't enough. But the cross was enough. Now that we know the cross is a finished work, and there is no secondary purification after death, the next logical question is this: if the dead are simply sleeping, what exactly happens at the sound of the last trumpet? That is exactly what we are tackling next. We are opening the timeline of the resurrection and the final judgment. Subscribe now so it finds you the moment it drops.